All right. So what is this organ that you seem to have discovered that's kind of not an organ, but acts as an organ and is this brand new thing that has gotten a lot of the headlines lately?
Basically, colleagues of mine, this sort of came in from left field, colleagues of mine who are endoscopists, so the guys who put down tubes down your throat and up your butt to look at your colon or your stomach or whatever,
Right.
they had a new version of that machine that allowed them to look at the microscopic level at living tissue. And when they saw in most organs that they were looking at, the esophagus, the stomach, the colon, what they saw mimicked what we saw under the microscope. But when they looked in the bile duct, so back to the liver again, everything for me comes to the liver. Um, the bile duct is so thin that they were able to see deeper into the wall. And the middle layer of all the visceral organs is connective tissue that holds it together.
Right.
And they were able to see into that. And when we see connective tissue on the microscope slide, it looks like layers of collagen stacked as a wall.
Mm-hmm.
But when they looked in the living tissue, it looked like open spaces that were filled with fluid.
Mm.
And long story short, what we realized is that whenever we take tissue to make a slide out of it, we dehydrate it and those spaces collapse.
Oh,
So
wow.
what is an open space looks like a wall.
Right.
On the slide, there are often cracks between those collagen bundles, and we sort of thought those are artifacts because dense collagen is so stiff that it cracks when you make a thin slide out of it. But it turns out those aren't artifacts, those are remnants of the collapsed spaces. So what we thought was real, a wall of connective tissue, was an artifact of dehydration. What we thought were artifacts, the cracks, were actually the remnants of the real.
Wow.
So the bile duct, who really cares about the bile duct? Me and about 24 other people on the planet, right?
And the bile duct.
Yeah. And now bile duct, yeah, well, I guess it's conscious, so whatever. But it turns out that when you look at dense connective tissue anywhere in the body, there are always those cracks. Now I realize, oh, those are artifacts too. And so what different other cultures of scientific practice and healing have already recognized for decades, if not centuries. The fascia scientists have been talking about fascia this way, the osteopaths, craniosacral workers, people in Rolfing, that connective tissue is fluid. They were right. Where we're coming in with what's new, but we didn't know that existed because they're not sort of allowed to publish in Western allopathic medical literature, which is where we were searching for other people who have seen similar things, and there were none. So we thought this was novel. What we're bringing in that's novel is that includes all the visceral organs and the entire dermis of the entire body. So we've made the picture more complete. So now we called it interstitium because we were injecting a fluorescent dye, which allows you to see the fluid moving through the spaces. So we were focused on the spaces. Interstitial spaces have been described in the body for a century, but these are larger interstitial spaces than had been described. So that's what's new from that perspective. Mm-hmm. They've been talking about it as fascia because they've been focused on the connective tissue, the collagen bundles that support the structures.
Right.
And again, face or vase. Is it interstitium or is it fascia?
Right.
Neither word captures the entire thing. So when we publish this, the first thing is the size of this is probably 20% of the fluid volume of the body is this space. It's lined by a novel cell type, or actually range of cell types. And it has very specific functions, which we're starting to delineate, some of which had already been discussed more generally in the fascia world and the osteopathic community, in Chinese medicine and Tibetan medicine. But now we're starting to do that with the Western scientific kind of rigor. And so that's rolling out. And so whether it's an organ or not, that was sort of the thing that was in the press release that suddenly exploded, mainly because there was no other scientific news that week. Stephen Hawking had died 2 weeks before, so if he had waited 2 weeks, we would never have been done.
What? So a couple questions.
A lot to be said for timing.
What is the definition of an organ?
Well, that's the thing. Who makes such a definition? There are different definitions. One definition is that An organ is a tissue that wherever you look in it, it looks the same. And so the liver, wherever you look, and doesn't look like something else. So wherever you look in the liver, it looks like liver. Wherever you look in the lung, it looks like lung. And lung never looks like liver, and liver never looks like lung.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
Like your epidermis is an organ.
Yes. That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
I got samples. But,
How do they taste?
yeah. Yeah, we're not going down that one. Rabbit hole. Lava beans, I know. I used to offer the medical students $100 for anyone who could come up with a liver joke that I had not heard before. Never had to pay out. So the functionality of the, and then there's, organs serve specific functions. And a lot of people, for example, anatomists were like really pissed at us because they're like, what are you talking about this as being a functional organ? It's merely connective tissue.
Right.
Model of the body as a machine. The parts that connect the parts, like screws and glue, aren't important other than just to connect things.
Other than just keeping everything together.
Yeah.
Until you try to build a house with Elmer's fucking glue.
Damn IKEA.
But in biology, every little bit matters. And so it turns out this isn't just connective tissue. It's probably a signaling pathway for cells and molecules for the entire body. For inflammation, this is how cancer spreads. It may be a buffering system for inflammatory processes. This is where the work is. We're figuring this out.
Wow.
So whether it's an organ or not, I don't really care. Organs in the body don't walk around with a little name tag that says, I'm an organ.
Right.
Please label me this.
Yeah, please label me this.
For our turd brains.
But do I think it's an organ? Shh. Yeah, it's an organ. but that's just labels.
Yeah.
We're interested in figuring out where it is and what it is and what it does.
All right. So as a teaser for next time, I know you got to go, Doc, but I thank you for spending your time with today. For the teaser for next time that we get together, we've got to talk about your comments at Science and Non-Duality that were connected with if the quantum foam ultimately creates our consciousness and our multiple layers of consciousness, and that is derived from regular Newtonian matter, then what are the implications of potential dark matter consciousness that doesn't normally interact with our Newtonian classical model, but which does and coexists? I
got in
tell
on
you,
that session.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. That blew my mind.
I can't write about.
No, and that's one of the things that I had not heard before, because there are very few things that I hear that blow my mind. That was one of them. I was like, holy shit, how could I have missed that whole little tidbit that it becomes a Pandora's box of amazement?
Yeah, so the teaser for that is the whole non-material realm of the astral plane. If that exists, how do we fit it in with all this?
Yeah.
To be continued.
Oh my God.
We will
I think
reconcile.
I'm going to have to write this up not as a scientific paper or a philosophy paper, but as a novel.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so that's buzzing around in my brain for when I have some spare time in 20 years. Invite me back to talk about that. I would love